All right. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. And yeah, for right now, I'm doing the solo thing. Me and Craig, I should say. Craig and I are together again. And my goal, my hope, is to actually finish with chapter 1 today. It's possible. It's possible that that will happen. I had some time to read ahead, so we'll see how we go. But I think I'm just going to go ahead and jump immediately into it here. On the word right. So this is Sutta 18. For any contemplatives or Brahmins endowed with wrong view, wrong resolve, wrong speech, wrong action, wrong livelihood, wrong effort, wrong mindfulness, and wrong concentration. If they follow the holy life, even when having made a wish for results, they are incapable of obtaining results. If they follow the holy life, even when having made no wish, they are incapable of obtaining results. If they follow the holy life, even when both having made a wish and having made no wish, they are incapable of obtaining results. If they follow the holy life, even when neither having made a wish nor having made no wish, they are incapable of obtaining results. Why is that? Because it is an inappropriate way of obtaining results. So I'm actually just going to go ahead and let this whole sutta play out here so I can kind of keep it on time. But then afterwards, you'll notice the repetition per the usual, right? And so when we get through that, yeah, looking forward to commenting on it. Suppose a man in need of oil, looking for oil, wandering in search of oil, would pile gravel in a tub and press it, sprinkling it again and again with water. If he were to pile gravel in a tub and press it, sprinkling it again and again with water, even when having made a wish for results, having made no wish, both having made a wish and having made no wish, neither having made a wish nor having made no wish, he would be incapable of obtaining results. Why is that? Because it is an inappropriate way of obtaining results. Suppose a man in need of milk, looking for milk, wandering in search of milk, would twist the horn of a newly calved cow. If he were to twist the horn of a newly calved cow, even when having made a wish for results, having made no wish, both having made a wish and having made no wish, neither having made a wish nor having made no wish, he would be incapable of obtaining results. Why is that? Because it is an inappropriate way of obtaining results. In the same way, any contemplatives or Brahmins endowed with wrong view, wrong resolve, wrong speech, wrong action, wrong livelihood, wrong effort, wrong mindfulness, and wrong concentration, if they follow life, even when having made a wish for results, having made no wish, both having made a wish and having made no wish, neither having made a wish nor having made no wish, they are incapable of obtaining results. Why is that? Because it is an inappropriate way of obtaining results. But as for any contemplatives or Brahmins endowed with right view, right resolve, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, if they follow the holy life, even when having wish, they are capable of obtaining results. If they follow the holy life, even when having made no wish, they are capable of obtaining results. If they follow the holy life, even when both having made a wish and having made no wish, they are capable of obtaining results. If they follow the holy life, even when neither having made a wish nor having made no wish, they are capable of obtaining results. Why is that? Because it is an appropriate way of obtaining results. Suppose a man in need of oil, looking for oil, wandering in search of oil, would pile sesame seeds in a tub and press them, sprinkling them again and again with water. If he were to pile sesame seeds in a tub and press them, sprinkling them again and again with water, even when having made a wish for results, having made no wish, both having made a wish and having made no wish, neither having made a wish nor having made no wish, he would be capable of obtaining results. Why is that? Because it is an appropriate way of obtaining results. Suppose a man in need of milk, looking for milk, wandering in search of milk, would pull the teat of a newly calved cow. If he were to pull the teat of a newly calved cow, even when having made a wish for results, having made no wish, both having made a wish and having made no wish, neither having made a wish nor having made no wish, he would be capable of obtaining results. Why is that? Because it is an appropriate way of obtaining results. In the same way, any contemplatives or Brahmins endowed with right view, right resolve, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, if they follow the holy life, even when having made a wish for results, having made no wish, both having made a wish and having made no wish, neither having made a wish nor having made no wish, they are capable of obtaining results. Why is that? Because it is an appropriate way of obtaining results. So I'm just really growing to appreciate the structure of bhikkhus, of the way that, again, I don't read the native language, that the Pāli Canon was written in, but I have to assume, I guess we all have to assume that, it has this repetition. And I think what I really appreciate about the repetition on this particular sutta is with each passage, it's reiterating, using examples, analogies that we can relate to. I mean, even I can relate to, even though I haven't, milked a cow since I was a kid, and I haven't, so regardless, the analogies that are being used here are really accessible. So it begins, with just whether or not, so, to my mind, if I was to go back with and get to the question, right? Because it always begins with the student asks the question and the teacher gives a response. And so, in the beginning, they're talking about whether or not one is, walking a holy path. And, in the case of Buddhism, that's following the Eightfold Path. And so that's coming up, repeatedly here. And again, that repetition is there, right? Each individual Eightfold Path is repeated, that repetition. And, begins early on in the sutta with, okay, well, someone could so he begins with that right away, right? For any contemplatives or Brahmins endowed with wrong view, wrong resolve, right? So again, beginning right away here with the 8 aspects of the Eightfold Path. And here beginning right away with if a contemplative, right? And again, Buddha is, Gautama is talking about this early on in beginning of the chapter, right? This idea that to his view, there is a way. This is the way to relieve suffering. And so here he says, You may be a contemplative, right? You may be a Brahmin, but if you're not practicing the Eightfold Path, if you're not holding right view, in other words, if you still have wrong ideas about the way that our fabricated mind works, if you can't see that clearly, if you have wrong resolve, if your intentions are bad, right? If you're building up your resolve on things that are impermanent and will lead to aversion or clinging, which if you take that further down Buddhist road, right, it can lead to suffering, because in that we are attached, and it is that attachment in and of itself that creates the suffering, right? So how do we become attached? By holding these wrong views, by performing in the world with wrong resolve, by not imbibing in, by imbibing in wrong speech, hateful speech, lying, dishonesty, cruelty, right? Wrong action, right? So, he's saying, well, you could make a wish and hope that you get results. You could hope for that. You could make no wish. You could make a wish not really expecting any results, or, you could make, you know, none of the above, right? It's irrelevant, he says. If you're not operating from a place of right view, right resolve, right speech, etc., right? Then, as he says, the very first stanza here, right? Why is that? Because it is an inappropriate way of obtaining results. And so he kind of sets up the model for us, right? Kind of like the cognitive model. And then he kind of brings it into, a great analogy, right? And what I like about the analogies, and again, I'm not a scholar, as you know, I'm just doing my best to kind of interpret this from, the absolutely not dedicated in terms of, studying Buddhism, but, long time practice, doing my best here. This idea of the man using gravel to make oil, right? What I love about these analogies, and then the cow, right, twisting its horn to get milk. And I think, as I mentioned before, it's one of the things that I just love so much about traditional Buddhism. When you get into teachings like this, that are derived from the Pāli Canon, and there's this sense of, and I'm not familiar with, I'm, like I said, it's been a long time. I did read texts a long time ago. I'm going to cut all that out. I don't think anybody's here, right? Am I wrong? Just you, Craig. But, in bringing in these kind of inane tasks, making oil, milking, right? Milking a cow. There's no attachment there. It's not easy to get attached. There's not a lot of potential in either one of those scenarios for Shempa, our ego getting hooked, right? In other words, I'm assuming at the time that this was written that everybody was pretty well acquainted with making oil, and that everybody was pretty well acquainted with getting milk, knowing how to milk a newly calved cow. So to my view, he's doing this to say all that other stuff is contrivances. There's really only one way of obtaining results that's appropriate, right? Just like we can't get oil out of gravel and water, and we can't get milk out of twisting a calf's horn. Doesn't matter how long we twist it, how much we pray as we're twisting it, how devoted we are in our twisting of it, right? It doesn't matter how faithfully and ardently and passionately we mix and blend and fold the gravel and the water together, desperately trying to make oil, it doesn't matter because you can't get there from there, argues Gautama. And I've heard his name said a couple different ways, so I'm sorry if I'm killing that. My apologies. Please correct me. And I'll look it up too. I'll promise to do that before next time. Yeah, so I don't know if I have anything else to add, other than that I just really appreciate that. This to my mind again is just kind of reiterating what was said back, in the introduction. That, Buddha was pretty clear that to his view, after, he experienced a long bout of just complete, avarice and luxury and sensual pleasure, just kind of reveling in sensual pleasures, and then not finding relief from suffering in that, and then restricting himself from all sensory pleasures. Once again, that fabrication of form, right? The five aggregates, and not finding pleasure there. So, again, I think this is getting to that precision. Does it matter how much you pray? Does it matter how fervent you are? If you're not doing the right mechanism, if you're not practicing, if you're not, right? Because again, Buddhism is an action plan, right? If you're looking at traditional Buddhism, like it's very much action oriented. It's very much on the practitioner to do the practice. Buddha says anyone can have this. Anyone can do this, but no one can do it for you. You can't outsource it. That's not how it works. Yeah, so I hope I got that right. Really enjoyed that. Really enjoyed that. Okay, so moving on, Sutta 19. Ganaka Magayana, again, my apologies if I mispronounced that. The Brahmin said to the Blessed One, when Master Gautama's disciples are thus exhorted and instructed by him, do they all attain unbinding, the absolute conclusion, or do some of them not? Brahmin, when my disciples are thus exhorted and instructed by me, some attain unbinding, the absolute conclusion, and some don't. What is the reason? What is the cause when unbinding is there, and the path leading to unbinding is there, and Master Gautama is there as the guide? That when Master Gautama's disciples are thus exhorted and instructed by him, some attain unbinding, the absolute conclusion, and some don't. In that case, Brahmin, I will cross-question you on this matter. Answer as you see fit. What do you think? Are you skilled in the road leading to Rajaga? Yes, sir, I am skilled in the road leading to Rajaga. Now, what do you think? There's a case where a man would come wanting to go to Rajaga. Having gone to you, he would say, I want to go to Rajaga. Tell me the way to Rajaga. You would tell him, well, my good man, this road goes to Rajaga. Go along it for a while. Having gone along for a while, you will see a village named such and such. Go along for a while. Having gone along for a while, you will see a town named such and such. Go along for a while. Having gone along for a while, you will see Rajaga, with its lovely parks, lovely forests, lovely meadows, lovely ponds. Having been thus exhorted and instructed by you, he would take a wrong road and arrive out west. Then a second man would come, wanting to go to Rajaga. Having gone to you, he would say, I want to go to Rajaga. Tell me the way to Rajaga. You would tell him, well, my good man, this road goes to Rajaga. Go along it for a while. Having gone along it for a while, you will see a village named such and such. Go along for a while. Having gone along for a while, you will see a town named such and such. Go along for a while. Having gone along for a while, you will see Rajaga with its lovely parks, lovely forests, lovely meadows, lovely ponds. Having been thus exhorted and instructed by you, he would arrive safely. Now, what is the reason? What is the cause? When Rajaga is there, and the road leading to Rajaga is there, and you are there as the guide, that when they are thus exhorted and instructed by you, the first man takes the wrong road and arrives out west, while the second man arrives safely at Rajagaha? What can I do about that, Master Gotama? I'm the one who shows the way. In the same way, Brahman, when unbinding is there, and the path leading to unbinding is there, and I am there as the guide, when my disciples are thus exhorted and instructed by me, some attain unbinding, the absolute conclusion, and some don't. What can I do about that, Brahman? The Tathagata is the one who shows the way. So here's where, forgive me, I missed a term, Tathagata, which I will have to look up and include in the Discord server. But I'll speak to the rest of it. And there's, again, I've now growing accustomed to the consistency of the repetition and the nature of the stanzas, and I'm appreciating it. It's helping me to relax a little bit more and just kind of really try to show up and just listen, to what's being said in these stories. So as I was reading this, I was thinking to myself, well, in each example here, Master Gotama is talking about one road. There's one, and again, right, kind of reiterating that he's kind of a stickler, right? He repeats this often. This is, he was very clear in his view here, right? That this is the way to Rajana, right? This is the way to liberation. So I think what this story is getting at here is that the road to Rajana represents the Eightfold Path in Buddhism. And again, the Buddha was pretty clear that you didn't have to, God was really not talked about in the early traditional Buddhist texts. That was just kind of a non-issue. God was kind of irrelevant in the early Buddhist text. Why? Because it's an action plan that requires Homo sapien to take action, right? It's irrelevant in the Buddhist view. And so I think that that's kind of being got at again here. He's saying, look, I have a map. I took this path. It was really, really long. I passed a couple villages. The villages in his case might have been, really great sex and lots of really good intoxicants and lots of really good ways to go unconscious and take himself out. And again, if you go and you read the story of Siddhartha and how he, awakened his mind is how I like to think about it. That was part of his journey that, so maybe that was the larger town, right? Maybe the small village was his asceticism. Who knows, right? I think that those stops that he's talking about in this story, they simply represent how our mind likes to take us off somewhere and is really, really good at convincing us. And earlier today I dropped a video in the Discord server. I think I did it in the Eastern channel, but it's I can't even remember who's it might be John Kabat-Zinn. I can't remember who's talking right now, but they're talking about how when they're meditating, they don't allow themselves to get off the cushion until they have noticed themselves telling themselves they get off the cushion now and really believe it. They have to go through that experience 3 times, and then they're allowed to get off the cushion. So if you want to go back and watch that video, he explains why he does that and what that means. And that, I think, is what's getting got out here. The road is there for us, says Buddha. A Buddha, the Buddha, right? The Gautama, whatever, the I think if he was alive, I think he would probably take up a lot of issue with, because again, he was really clear. I'm not a god. There's no, this is going to maybe offend people, but, I just encourage you to look at the original, it splits off from Hinduism, and yes, there are gods in Buddhism, but they're not worshipped. They're not worshipped. Kind of represent things. But at any rate, the path doesn't go anywhere. The path doesn't change. It's we who step off the path. And that, as he says, you go on for a while and you'll see a village named such and such. And I love that such and such. Again, it's kind of like, it doesn't need a name. Why? Because it's just a distraction. It's irrelevant. It's not on the path. It's not on the path. And so, I think when he gets to the end here, in the same way, Brahman, when unbinding is there, right? So again, if you go back and you look at the earlier parts of the chapter, right, where Bhikkhu's talking about unbinding, the fabricated mind, becoming unbound from the fabricated mind, becoming unbound, unenslaved, liberated from the five aggregates that keep us bound, right, to our believing that life is permanent, right? That to the ultimate matrix, right? So listen to what he's saying here. This is radical. In the same way, Brahman, in other words, just like these people that are stepping off, well, I don't know. I can't make someone be unbound. I can't. And this, I think, is a really critical feature of Buddhism that isn't always popular, certainly not where I live, and certainly not right now, I find, to my view. He's saying, what am I supposed to do about it? Look, I'm a teacher. But am I, look, he doesn't even say I'm a teacher. Listen to what he says. I am there as the guide. A guide is really different from a teacher. A guide is really different from a teacher. A teacher almost presupposes that we have something that we're going to teach someone else. I know this sounds like the same thing, but to me, guide is a little bit more removed, detached, right? Like, okay, just like in these parables, right? Just like in these suttas, yes, I know the way. Here's a road. I took that road. I found that when I took that road, I got over here. I tried going off the road a couple times, and it didn't really turn out real well. For me, I was still really unhappy. But then I got back on the road, and I just kind of kept going on that road. And although he doesn't say it here, I'll just say from my own experience, I stayed on that road even when I didn't want to be on that road. I stayed on that road when I thought the road was bullshit. I stayed on that road when other people told me that I was on the wrong road. I stayed on that road, right? So there's a certain amount of, in the same way, Brahman, when unbinding is there, and the path leading to unbinding is there, and I am there as the guide, which, we live in a time, the guide is always there. The tricky part for us, right, going forward in the future for mankind, to my view, is just becoming very critical of making sure that we know which information is wise information and which information is unwise. Back in this story, there's just a small village and there's just a small town. But if we were to update this story, think about what this road would be dotted with today to distract you away from the path that leads to unbinding. So yeah, good stuff here. All right, Sutta 20. Venerable Ananda, asks, suppose that there were a royal frontier city with strong ramparts, strong walls and arches, and a single gate. In it would be a wise, competent, and intelligent gatekeeper to keep out those he didn't know and to let in those he did. Walking along the path encircling the city, he wouldn't see a crack or an opening in the walls big enough for even a cat to slip through. Although he wouldn't know that so and so many creatures enter or leave the city, he would know this. Whatever large creatures enter or leave the city, all enter or leave it through this gate. Ah, this is good stuff here. Okay, but I'm going to finish this. In the same way, the Tathagata isn't concerned with whether all the cosmos, or half of it, or a third of it, led to release by means of his Dhamma, but he does know this. All that have been led, are being led, or will be led to release from the cosmos have done so, are doing so, or will do so after having abandoned the 5 hindrances, those defilements of awareness that weaken discernment, having well established their minds in the 4 establishings of mindfulness, and having developed, as they have come to be, the 7 factors for awakening. Wow. So I talked about this in the last week as well, that I've just kind of been a little stuck. I'm just kind of going through something right now where I'm just kind of stuck. My needle's kind of needle skipping. You know what I mean? I'm kind of stuck in a little bit of a habit of mind, and it centers on this. And I was actually just talking to Demo, because he joined me last week about this when he got on the call, that talking about the chariots, the 7 chariots. And I was saying that if I was going to be really honest about, my practice right now, I'm struggling right now. I'm really struggling with this concept. And it makes me wonder how monks who are householders, who maybe live in, I should say, and it makes me wonder how householders, that are really devoted Buddhists, but, they didn't become monks, they didn't become ordained, and they're doing life, right? They're doing the rest of us bozos on this bus. Depending on where you live, I think right now is just a really wild time. I can't speak for any of you out there, but I know where I live in the United States, and I know it's just not me. I mean, it just feels like a wild time, and I worry sometimes that social media, our devices, our constant distractions, there are just a million other things along the road here that make it that much harder to stay on the road, So I hope that if you're listening to this and anybody's really, maybe going through a rough time and you're looking for a map, maybe you've tried other maps and the map isn't where you want to go, or it doesn't, you're like, oh yeah, I have friends who, use that map and right on, I just don't want to go there. That's not where I want to go. Might be overextending this metaphor here, but I hope that you will look into traditional Buddhism, because especially if you find yourself in these days, just feeling really alienated, maybe feeling lonely, disconnected from humans, from your fellows. Maybe you're feeling like you lack purpose. I might pause it to you. I'll just repeat again here. If you go back to the early part of the chapter and feeding, 5 aggregates, go back and look up that idea of feeding. Buddha suggests, he was a psychologist, not a god. And he suggests that what we feed our mind is really, 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 really important. Because attention is intention, and again, you learn that by doing the practice, right? Going in and doing the different forms of meditation that are part of the Eightfold Path. And other traditions as well, right? But these were simpler times, right? What was Buddha's time? What, like 5,000 years ago or something like that? I know you're not around to protect yourself here, Buddha, but I would wager you, right? I'd make you a bet if you were still alive that you yourself would be the first to say, my gosh, it must be hard to follow this path today. With so many distractions that are designed to play on the human gestalt aspects of our evolutionary makeup, our fear, our quick look and need to find things that could be dangerous, which is often why we continue to doom scroll on things that make us feel bad. There's just so much going on here. And psychologically, to my view, I am a psychologist. I don't care about any of that. Whatever. Great. There's a term for that. Awesome. I think what's more interesting to me is, I have had some kind of radical liberation from this path. And well, the dividends have been beyond words. So I'll just say that this is helpful for me. I think I really need to hear this, and it's reminding me that I need to get a teacher, who can remind me this on a regular basis. All those who have been led, are being led, or will be led from the cosmos have already done so, are doing so, or will do so after having abandoned the 5 hindrances. And I've had this experience in meditation. Definitely. And so what does it feel like temporarily to drop the 5 hindrances? And I don't even know, I don't even know exactly what he meant, but I can say that I definitely had a couple, I've definitely had one in particular that definitely changed the direction of my life when I was 21, where I just had a fully egoic break. I would argue like maybe the one that's necessary to experience, because that the break is the abandonment of the 5 hindrances. If you go in and you look at the 5 hindrances and you contemplate those and think about those, really it's kind of what makes up our egoic identification, right? That we create those mental frameworks, all fabricated based on earlier conditioning, cultural conditioning, all the things we talked about in earlier sections. So, when you abandon those, wow. Well, you can't go home again, I can tell you that. And I do mean that in a good way, but I also mean it in, at least right now, I'll just speak for myself. I never talked about my Buddhism ever, ever, ever. You know, I'm gonna be 53 soon, and I've been Buddhist since I was 25, maybe 24, 25. And very few people, you know, knew that about me other than people who really, really knew me, you know, but I'm really vocal about it now. I don't want to say I'm proselytizing. I hope I'm not. Man, I hope my friends would say, hey, dude, turn it down, roll it back, roll back, roll back. But I know there's other paths. There's lots of great paths out there, but I think what I would like to see is that I just want, anyway, I'm going to cut all that out. Moving on. All right, so we're now getting into suttas that are concerned with what the Buddha called the middle way, right? And again, you know, his own path included Machiavellian pleasure, right? Just full sensory pleasure, you know, the sense gates, right? The aggregate of form, like all the senses. And then, of course, he also lived a life of great deprivation, right? Nearly starving himself to death. Um, no creature comforts, right? An ascetic monk trying to break himself, trying to break his own will, right? Because you can do that. You know, you can break your own will, right? You think about there are many great writers, you know, that regardless of their, you know, their situations, you know, if I could just put that aside, you know, I will say that, you know, I think any writer that you've ever read who maybe talks about how they stepped away from the world for like a year, right? Or and then they wrote, I mean, they are taking an aspect of the Buddha's journey here, also the hero's journey, right? Which of course, you know, Jung and Joseph Campbell too, right? I mean, there's William James, there's so many people here who've been influenced by Eastern thought. So he talks about the middle way, right? That he's tried both extremes and that neither one led to the alleviation of suffering. So Sutta 21, and how is striving fruitful? How is exertion fruitful? These are, I love how it starts, right? Again, I have to keep coming back to like, you know, I'm living in 2024, I'm living in the United States, I've been a classroom teacher for 20 years, you know, I'm just thinking, wow, I feel like I've had these conversations with students. I mean, maybe they don't use that language, but they're basically asking the same question. And I get it, right? I get it because striving is hard, exertion is hard. It doesn't feel good to be uncomfortable. So I really can appreciate why someone would say, why are we doing this? It's not fun. So when how is striving fruitful? How is exertion fruitful? There is the case where a monk, when not loaded down, doesn't load himself down with pain, nor does he reject pleasure that accords with the Dhamma, although he is not infatuated with that pleasure. And further, the monk notices this. When I live according to my pleasure, unskillful Dhammas increase in me, and skillful Dhammas decline. When I exert myself with stress and pain, though unskillful Dhammas decline. When I exert myself with stress and pain, though, unskillful Dhammas decline in me, and skillful Dhammas increase. Why don't I exert myself with stress and pain? Why don't I exert myself with stress and pain? So he exerts himself with stress and pain. And while he is exerting himself with stress and pain, unskillful Dhammas decline in him, and skillful Dhammas increase. Then at a later time, he would no longer exert himself with stress and pain. Why is that? Because he has attained the goal for which he was exerting himself with stress and pain. That is why, at a later time, he would no longer exert himself with stress and pain. Suppose a Fletcher were to heat and warm an arrow shaft. Suppose a Fletcher were to heat and warm an arrow shaft between two flames, making it straight and pliable. Then at a later time, he would no longer heat and warm the shaft between two flames, making it straight and pliable. Why is that? Because he has attained the goal for which he was heating and warming the shaft. That is why at a later time he would no longer heat and warm the shaft between two flames, making it straight and pliable. In the same way, the monk notices this. When I live according to my pleasure, unskillful dhammas increase in me, and skillful dhammas decline. When I exert myself with stress and pain, though, unskillful dhammas decline in me, and skillful dhammas increase. Why don't I exert myself with stress and pain? So he exerts himself with stress and pain, and while he is exerting himself with stress and pain, unskillful dhammas decline in him, and skillful dhammas increase. Then at a later time, he would no longer exert himself with stress and pain. Why is that? Because he has attained the goal for which he was exerting himself with stress and pain. That is why at a later time, he would no longer exert himself with stress and pain. Okay, so I had a guest for like 2 seconds. We'll see if they come back. So again, I've mentioned quite frequently, right, that I am not a scholar, but I'm going to give you what I think he's. I'm going to base it in my practical application of meditation, because it's from that practice that I think I understand this. So, what this is speaking to me is the question is getting at, I'm gonna, and again, please forgive me if I'm getting this wrong to someone who really, really is well studied in this, you know. To my mind, striving and exertion here represent meditation. And it's funny that striving is here because, you know, oftentimes you'll hear the word striving when discussed in Buddhism. It's often associated with something that not that you're trying to avoid, right? That's aversion, but you know, you're not actively in pursuit, right? That usually, you know, if you've chosen like a traditional, you know, approach to Buddhism and you're kind of working with the Eightfold Path, you know, striving isn't really something that you're kind of doing. That's just not really part of the path, right? But I think that he's talking about striving and exertion in the service of meditation. There is the case where a monk, when not loaded down, doesn't load himself down with pain, nor does he reject pleasure that accords with the Dhamma. So what does he mean by that? Pleasure that accords with the Dhamma. Well, he could be talking about the jhanas here, could be talking about some of the, you know, pretty intense and incredible experiences that you can have in some of those states, right? So again, it's the middle way. He's not rejecting pleasure. He's not infatuated with the pleasure, right? And maybe he notices, right, that when he's not all bound up and avoiding or infatuated with, right, wanting, desiring, clinging, I must have it, passion. He notices, hey, you know, when I'm not doing that, right, when I live according to my pleasure, right, when I just do whatever's pleasurable, I notice that I become more unskillful in my life and how I meet and greet life. And to my view, Buddha was very pragmatic, you know, man. I mean, so basically what I'm hearing him say is, well, that's just not efficient. Remember, to my mind, it's not, it's this atheist reading to you right now never could have become Buddhist if the traditional Buddhist text wasn't written as it was, where there is God does not enter into it. God is irrelevant in traditional Buddhism. So he's just repeating this kind of notion, this stanza over and over and over again. He notices when I'm living for sensory pleasure, I become unskillful, unstrategic after fashion, right? Not only that, but my skillful strategies to life, right, that are, I know ultimately are going to be most strategic, most effective, most likely to relieve me from suffering. I also notice when I follow my pleasure pursuits that those skills, those actions decline, right? So my unskillfulness increases and my skillfulness decreases, contingent upon whether or not I'm willing to exert myself with stress and pain. Again, I don't know if I'm getting this right, but I just feel like I think the part where I'm getting a little bit confused. So I'm gonna go down again to another stanza that, again, he's just repeating this in different scenarios. So I'm gonna go to the one where he's talking about, I don't know what a Fletcher is. I'll have to look that up. I'm gonna go to the one to the Fletcher where he's making an arrow for a particular purpose, right? And then he will abandon it when he doesn't need it anymore. Where I think I'm having a little bit of trouble with this is that the Buddha would never tell someone to abandon the path. So, or maybe I'm just not, because it's been a while since I've read Buddhism, I just don't, or because I'm American and I'm a Westerner, I just don't remember ever hearing anything about the Buddha ever suggesting that it would ever be wise to walk off the path. So when he says things like, that is why at a later time he would no longer heat and warm the shaft, I have to assume he doesn't mean that you step away from the path, but maybe you pick up another toolbox of the Eightfold Path. That's the only thing I can think of, because otherwise he's contradicting himself. And so this is where I would really need a teacher to kind of straighten me out. Okay. All right. I really wanted to get to the end of this chapter, but maybe I'll just go a little bit over and do that. No, I'm not going to do it because we're getting to someone I really want to talk about here. And I want to have more time to talk about her than like the time I have right now. So we're still on chapter 1. But I will read before we get to Sister Dhammadina. And again, I'm sorry if I said that wrong, but we got one more sutta to go before we get to, that's right, a woman nun. Because traditional Buddhism did not look at women as inferior or incapable of being scholars and spiritual pursuers, which I think is quite cool. Sutta 22. When touched with a feeling of pain, the uninstructed run-of-the-mill person sorrows, grieves, and laments, beats his breast, becomes distraught. So he feels 2 pains, physical and mental, just as if they were to shoot a man with an arrow and right afterward were to shoot him with another one, so that he would feel the pains of two arrows in the same way. When touched with a feeling of pain, the uninstructed, run-of-the-mill person sorrows, grieves, and laments, beats his breast, becomes distraught. So he feels two pains, physical and mental. As he is touched by that painful feeling, he is resistant. So remember we talked about the closed fist, right? Any resistance obsession with regard to that painful feeling obsesses him. So there's the trap, right? The more pain he feels and the more dissatisfactory he finds that pain, right? The tighter the fist becomes, right? It becomes a trap. Touched by that painful feeling, he delights in sensuality. Why is that? Because the uninstructed run-of-the-mill person does not discern any escape from painful feeling aside from sensuality. As he is delighting in sensuality, any passion obsession with regarding of pleasure obsesses him. He does not discern, as it has come to be, the origination passing away, allure, drawback, or escape from that feeling, as he does not discern the origination, passing away, allure, drawback, or escape from that feeling, then any ignorance obsession with regard to that feeling of neither pleasure nor pain obsesses him. Sensing a feeling of pleasure, he senses it as though joined with it, attachment, right? Mine, it's mine, my precious, right? And that can go for sensory pleasure, right? We don't want it to end. We don't want the party to be over. We don't want anybody to go home. We don't want the sex to be over. We don't want the movie to be over, the show to be over, right? We don't want the experience to be over. Sensing a feeling of pain, he senses it as though joined with it. Sensing a feeling of neither pleasure nor pain, he senses it as though joined with it. This is called an uninstructed run-of-the-mill person, joined with birth, aging and death, with sorrows, lamentations, pains, distresses, and despairs. He is joined, I tell you, with suffering and stress. Now the well-instructed disciple of the noble ones, when touched with a feeling of pain, does not sorrow, grieve, or lament, does not beat his breast or become distraught. So he feels one pain, physical, but not mental, just as if they were to shoot a man with an arrow, and right afterward did not shoot him with another one, so that he would feel the pain of only one arrow in the same way. When touched with a feeling of, in the same way, when touched with the feeling of pain, the well-instructed disciple of the noble ones does not sorrow, grieve, or lament, does not beat his breast or become distraught. He feels one pain, physical, but not mental. As he is touched by that painful feeling, he is not resistant. No resistance obsession with regard to that painful feeling obsesses him. Touched by that painful feeling, he does not delight in sensuality. Why is that? Because the well-instructed disciple of the noble ones discern an escape from painful feeling, aside from sensuality. As he is not delighting in sensuality, no passion obsession with regard to that feeling of pleasure obsesses him. He discerns, as it has come to be, the origination passing away, allure, drawback, and escape from that feeling. As he discerns the origination passing away, allure, drawback, and escape from that feeling, no ignorance obsession with regard to that feeling of neither pleasure nor pain obsesses him. Sensing a feeling of pleasure, he senses it disjoined from him. Sensing a feeling of pain, he senses it disjoined from him. Sensing a feeling of neither pleasure nor pain, he senses it disjoined from him, from it. This is called a well-instructed disciple of the noble ones, disjoined from birth, aging and death, from sorrows, lamentations, pains, distresses, and despairs. He is disjoined, I tell you, from suffering and stress. This is the difference. This is the distinction. This, the distinguishing factor between the well-instructed disciple of the noble ones and the uninstructed, run-of-the-mill person. I think that he does such an excellent job here of trying to explain something that doesn't feel accessible because we're not consciously aware of this process that he's describing. You know, I mean, some people are more conscious of it than others. Some are completely unconscious of it. And even if you practice, right, even if you've practiced for a long time and you have this disjointing that he's describing, right? There may still be layers of fabrication below it that are creating within you Shempa, or just a pattern that's unskillful, unwise. What I think of when I'm reading this is I'm thinking about why meditation is so critical in Buddhism. You know, again, I've talked about this before. It's not like I'm making it up. Hi, Baba, I'm almost done here. I'm just finishing up my reading for the day, but you're most welcome. And then I'm going to be getting off of here actually, but right now I'm just finishing up Sutta 22, and I'm talking about what I think is meant. And in these last few minutes, if you look in the chat in here, you can see the book that I'm reading, and I'm actually at the top of page, well, I'm actually at the bottom of page 55. Okay, so he's gone. But a great way to really get into contact with this and train, you know, sometimes you'll hear people talk about how, you know, in Buddhism, they train for their death. And yeah, you know, kind of like the military does that too. You know, they kind of train for their death to a certain degree. I wish they trained for it better. Like I wish they'd bring in Buddhist training. That'd be great because that's working with the mind, not just the body, you know. But in other words, the egoic mind in relationship to one's inevitable death, you know, which Buddhists spend a considerable time thinking about. There's a lot of freedom in that. I can tell you, someone who's closer to dead than alive. I don't fear my death, and that's a result of Buddhism. So, I mean, I'm nervous about the unknown, but I don't fear death. But this idea here, right, of disjoining from the pain in our body so that we're not creating mental states, stories that reinforce the physical pain. And now it becomes like a spiral, right? Where it becomes a dance of it becomes a dance where the physical pain feeds the fabricated mind and producing a story about the pain that some would argue, and I actually believe, although I haven't been able to quite tap in fully to how to relieve my own pain with it, you know, that well practiced enough, you know, you can break that cycle. Where it can get a lot harder, I would say, especially for addicts, you know, because I'm, you know, addiction, like I said, I've, you know, worked with addiction a lot, had a lot of good healing and a lot of good support and a lot of good wisdom that I've gotten exposed to my view. And well, that's a whole other level, you know, sensing a feeling of pleasure. He senses it disjoined from it. And if you really think about that, that is really, really radical. Most of us, when we are really in the depths of our pleasure, we're unconscious, you know, we're unconscious. So I'm going to get off because I'm over, but thank you for listening if you're listening. I'm going to finish up with Sutta 23 next time and get introduced to a Buddhist nun in early Buddhist tradition, 5,000 years ago. How cool is that? All right, so thanks. Take care. And yeah, I guess I'll see you. Bye.